Hello, everyone. Dr. Eames here. What I'd like to talk to you about this time are trends in the advertising industry and marketing in general. Now, there have always been power struggles in the marketing industry over time in advertising and promotion, where people don't always agree on the approach and what they're trying to accomplish. But today, the industry certainly is undergoing a period of change, and it's really about how can advertisers successfully adapt to the new technologies that are emerging all the time, because consumers are willing to use these new technologies. In fact, they're eager to use them. But the thing that's going along with this new technology and that constantly seems to be emerging is that consumers want more control over their information environment than ever before. And it seems to be that the solution for advertisers to spend, they're going to divide their spending a little bit. That means really dividing their advertising spending into more digital media. They're not going to abandon traditional media. And of that, I'm talking about television and radio, magazines, newspapers, things like that. They're going to continue to move away from that a little bit. But what we see is those mediums are turning up digitally. And so there's always going to be that reliance on the basic advertising tools. We're going to see print ads in digital spaces, in other words. It's going to continue over time. So the central role of those sorts of things are not going to change over time. Now, what we're going to see with this consumer control is really what we've seen over the last couple of decades. It's a content shift in how we view and how we obtain our entertainment in so many ways. So we had Netflix supplant Blockbuster. When you think about that basic thing, we had the substitution of a process that had developed over time where there was a physical product, a rented product, and consumers would travel to a store. They would physically go in there, interact, they would exchange money uh, right there or use credit of some form, but there would be a transaction and so forth. There would be all of that activity going on. And what have we done? We've done a complete replacement of all of that activity with downstreaming. So now a consumer does not have to leave their home. They can download content, and it's changed literally everything. And so that content shift started with Netflix. It has extended to what we see today with our shopping with Amazon and so forth, with other streaming services like Hulu. We have all sorts of on-demand models for the various places that we can receive our entertainment and so forth. So we have to talk about social media. Social media is basically media that is web-based. It allows the sharing of information between individuals and also between individuals and groups and so forth. We also have blogs, which are websites that individuals establish to express themselves and so forth, where they also can find people with common interests, and they can post facts and opinions and personal experiences and things like that. Well, today we've evolved from blogs, which are still popular and have had a rise and fall and so forth. But today we do podcasts. They seem to be a level up from blogs. But as you would expect, there seems to be a complete saturation of new media, new technology, new ways of doing things all the time. So it is quite tiresome for consumers to make choices. And it really is up to advertisers to use these new media in effective ways to engage still. The whole idea is still to get your brand message out there and the particular message you want in the minds of consumers. And so we have other things that we've developed over time, our DVRs, the digital use, where the consumer has some control again over what's happening. So we've moved on. We find that not only has the technology proliferated, but it's increased the different sorts of media that we're using. So we have, in other words, developed many different platforms. And so it has changed industries, it has created new industries, but it is really proliferation. And it's happening at the same time we're finding that consolidation is happening. So new platforms are developing, new companies emerging all the time to find new uses for these platforms and so forth. And then larger, more well-established companies will come along and buy them up for a variety of reasons. They view them as properties to be absorbed. And so within the bounds of legality, they will obtain these companies and they will expand and become themselves multi-platform. So sometimes the intent with buying these smaller companies is to expand into different platforms. Other times it's to remove some competition. Other times it's to gain possession of an idea or a patent or something like that. But certainly you can see that this really is resulting in an extreme amount of media clutter. And everything is fragmented in that sense. When the consumer looks what's out there, it can be quite overwhelming. So what it means, though, in the very optimistic sense for an advertiser, for us marketers out here, is that there are more ways for the advertiser to reach the consumer than ever before. And so there becomes a greater emphasis on using integrated brand promotion tools, of which advertising, even though it's traditional media, is not going to go away. It will just allow you to use some of the tried and true methods to reach consumers, more consumers all the time. So we do see new trends emerging, excuse me. So we see companies shifting where they're spending their money. A good example is Johnson and Johnson. They have literally thousands of products. They've moved hundreds of millions of dollars away from traditional media to more digital media, including the internet and blogs and so forth. And overall, many companies are doing this. So consumers now have more alternatives than ever before for acquiring information. They have PDAs and smartphones and the internet where they can search and so forth, blogs, social media, networks of all types, digital devices of all types, new content delivery models, the emergence of thousands and thousands of apps to do small little easy to control transactions and procedures and things like that. And consumers really flock to these sorts of things because it gives them control over their choices, over their information gathering, over the alternatives that they can choose from. And so advertisers, their response has been to recognize the even greater importance of the brand amongst all this clutter and fragmentation out there and ways to receive information. It becomes clear that what marketers still need to focus on more than ever is brand. And so that's why we have moved into this era of integrated brand promotion. The reality really is that consumers are now in greater control of their exposure to information than ever before, and their ability to access data about products and services has never been greater than it is now. So collectively, we would have to say that many individuals are gravitating towards sharing and creating information through websites of their own, through using social media, apps, video sites, and so forth. And so there are a lot of relevant questions really to ask here. And you can sort of judge your own media exposure and immersion by saying, do I post videos online? How many different platforms am I using as an individual? How much time am I really spending overall online using these various media and so forth? Are you even going so far as to monitor the amount of likes if you post something? Is it important to you? And so forth. What happens after you post something? Or do you think that the whole thing is a general waste of your time? Well, these are all questions that the average person might be thinking about occasionally. Scholars are certainly thinking about them, but it is all about the topic of consumer control, the increased use of this on-demand streaming, of DVRs, of the growing number of households who are reducing cable, for instance, and moving to on-stream, downloading information and so forth. So there are many things that are affecting us and changing the way we live and do things. This proliferation of media is creating so many new advertising options, and media firms are becoming very multi-platform. They're becoming giants with this multimedia use. And so television, radio, print, and internet properties are expanding, and companies are moving into these areas to get their messages out, which has just reinforced this notion that we have media clutter and fragmentation that does reduce the effectiveness of our advertising messages. So we do find that advertisers are using more IBP tools all the time to try and break through that clutter. but it definitely is a problem. It's harder and harder than ever before to reach any given consumer. So here's an example from Starbucks, actually, that shows you some of these notions and so forth, and how they use this social media. And you can see here that their approach is to engage you and get you to do different things. Well, this is an example of crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing involves the online distribution of certain tasks about a product or a brand and so forth to those who might be interested in using it, the consumers, the enthusiasts out there. So you source the crowd to find out what they think. And the idea is to get consumers more involved, to engage them and get them to commit to a brand in a way that might be sort of more passive than intrusive advertising might be. So we've moved to this idea of crowdsourcing and so forth. And we've really moved into mobile marketing and more mobile media of all types. The real challenge for us today as marketers is to make our messages relevant, to make them recognizable, and to make them repetitive in the sense that we want the message to get in and break through selective perception. Well, okay, folks. Well, that's all I want to talk about this time. I'll talk to you again soon.